Okay, I'll call the ZBA meeting to order. I'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time, we have one member excused and one vacancy. So with that, I'll ask both alternates if they care to come to the board to make a full board for tonight's meeting. Okay, and now because both positions were the secretary and vice secretary, I'd like to take a nomination as a temporary vice secretary for tonight's meeting and for the next couple of months, until we get complete full board.
Well, I could do it for this meeting, but the next one I may be gone, so.
Because the issue is we elect our officers in March, and so for tonight's meeting in February, we'll just need a vice secretary. If Jake is available at next meeting, it won't necessarily mean you'll have to do minutes at that point also.
Yeah, I'll throw my name in the hat for that position since I'm a full member.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, for tonight, Andy is vice secretary.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay.
Roll call, Andy.
So roll call.
Yeah.
Zerby.
Here.
Milky.
Here.
Warner.
Here.
Tyson here. Sheenstal.
Here.
All present and accounted for, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. This time, meeting minutes from December 5th. Anybody have any questions or comments? If not, accept the motion.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Support.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Minutes approved. Okay, next, correspondent board reports. Any comments?
Briefly from the Planning Commission, contractor for the rewrite of the zoning ordinance met with the Planning Commission this last month and took some feedback, and they're off and running at this point. I did mention to the Planning Commission about keeping the ZBA in the loop, and they were fully supportive of that. So, did you send those out, Peter, by chance?
It'd have been the
What?
the zoning report where the
Yes.
diagnostic note.
The
To the ZBA,
diagnostic.
haven't done that yet.
Okay.
I'll get a copy to them.
So what Peter's referring to there, the diagnostic report done by the vendor, basically is an approach on how they're going after this, what the zoning ordinance would visually look like, et cetera, et cetera. And the Planning Commission moved forward with it, so, but definitely want you guys in the loop because we have to work with the zoning ordinance every bit as much as the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I know we addressed it earlier. We've got one vacancy to fill, so we've got alternates for our current meeting. So with that, we'll move on. Approval of the agenda tonight.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support. Taylor, support. Those in favor?
Aye.
Agenda approved. Okay, at this time, I'll take public comment or any item not on the agenda. If anybody has a comment, step up to the podium, state your name and address. Hearing none, I close public comment. Okay, tonight we have a variance 2019-01 for a freestanding sign. At this time, I will take public comment for the variance, if anybody has any.
We're gonna open up the public hearing. Oh, it's open.
Yeah. Okay. Wait 1 second, if you would please, I forgot. Andy.
Before you open the public hearing, I wanted to make a comment to make sure everyone was aware that my company, Konwitzki Construction, is currently working on the property that will be coming up before the board tonight on a project that's independent of the application topic. But I wanted to clarify that for everybody in case anyone had an opinion about potential conflict of interest.
So per se, not the sign or anything?
Correct.
Just within the building?
On site in a different area, but
Okay.
and the intent was just to maintain, you know, impropriety, make sure everybody was comfortable with that. So if there's any issues, I can recuse, but if not, I feel like I can offer a clear and
Objective vote?
unbiased opinion.
I don't feel like that's an issue myself.
You're working on another project independent of
Correct.
the brewery that's going in?
Well, no, this is, we're working on the brewery project, and the application is not for the brewery, it's for the other tenant.
Right. Okay.
Separate.
Yeah. Just to clarify.
Yep.
Anybody have any objections?
I have no concerns.
No
Okay.
concern.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, now I will, Terry, if you want to step up. Sorry about that.
Thank you. So I'm Terry Somerville, 1810 Liberty Drive, and I'm representing Arboretum Apartments. I just wanted to make a comment that there was never really a nice hedge that was put in between where the road of this applicant project was and like the Arboretum Apartments. There's not like a nice green barrier there as far as a natural barrier. And in regards to this thing that they're trying to get a variance on, it seems to me that there's several signs already there, and one in particular is in violation. But I'm concerned that there's already excessive light, and to add more lit signs could adversely affect the quality of life of our residents, because there's not really a good barrier there.
Okay. Thank you.
Tad Richards, 1688 Trillium Circle in the Oaks. And I was made aware of this variance that you're gonna decide whether to grant or not, and for this sign. And we've been dealing with this oversized, over bright, over flashing sign that you can see from the Oaks subdivision. And I'm just hoping that you will consider that and all the people that live in that subdivision when a second sign, oversized and probably overlit, is possibly gonna go on the same property. So we are dead against it, and we hope that you can vote accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public comment. And applicant or the representative, if you,
Good evening, I'm Tim Beebe with Central Michigan Surveying and Development, here on behalf of the applicant. And in your package, you'll find that I had turned in a site plan looking at where the location of the sign is being proposed. last page, at least in my packet. Proposed signage variance would be out directly across from other commercial properties on the north side of the road. The sign would meet the setback requirements from the right of way. There was also in your packet an elevation and cross-section of the sign which shows the positioning of the sign and as how it relates to Remus Road and also the parking lot and the sidewalk. So if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to address them. I put together a letter which came in with the application, which addressed each of the items and the sections of the ordinance that were being looked at, the reasoning behind. I want to clarify, I'm sure the board understands, but just in case others do not, this is not a billboard. This is not the oversized billboard that they were, I think, talking about. And that billboard is not oversized as for a billboard. That doesn't fall under your individual signage ordinance sections that we're talking about here. This is a sign for a specific tenant, and it's being put out directly in front of their service shop to advertise their project. The sign is lit, but it is not oscillating. It is not turning. It's not flashing. So if that was one of your concerns, that is not what's being proposed. It is an internal lit sign. It's an oval in shape, and it will meet the square footage requirements of a single standing sign of 100 square feet. So we're not asking for a variance on the size. So what we are asking for a variance on tonight is the height of the sign. And that cross-section that I drew for you shows how it relates to the adjacent parking lots and roadway. The ground there dips down in between, so the elevation of the sign at the sign base is 20 feet. The ordinance reads what is the elevation of the roadway to the top of the sign, and that is 18. So we're looking for a 2-foot variance in height. We are not looking for a variance in the size. We're not looking for a variance in the placement. We are looking for a variance as to putting a sign out in front of this unit prior to a condominium being done. In the write-up, I went through the process by which condominium would be done on the property in the end. We still have a lot of building to build and a lot of tenants to put in. It is premature to be doing a condominium document at this point. We would end up modifying it each and every time a new tenant came in. That's an excessive amount of documentation that will get recorded and re-recorded. However, by doing the condominium, that would be a unit in and of itself having its own frontage and would be allowed to have it signed. So we are not asking for anything that wouldn't be allowed other than the height variance. So do you have any questions on the write-up that I provided? I tried to address each item that is in your criteria. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you do have.
I guess I just had one. At some point in the future, it will be kind of minimized at some point.
We still have, right now we're building the L portion, which is heading towards the south. There's still a wing that would head back towards the west. So. The wing that's heading to the south has one major tenant in it, but there'll be several more tenants that will be going in that wing.
Okay.
So, and with all large developments, you take a look at the south end of town, every one of the large developments have several variances on their signage. The signage ordinance isn't really written for very large scale developments that are phased in. And that's what this project is. So right now, when we get done with this current building phase, you're looking at approximately half of the building being built. And we started this a year and a half ago, about that, somewhere in there. And we went through the first phase, and that is completely occupied. We're building the next phase, and that is 50% occupied. So as we fill it, we build more. So,
Okay.
but a project of this size, you do not just go build the entire project without having tenants lined up to put in.
Okay. Well, I think at this time then we'll close it and board.
I have one question.
Okay.
So, when I'm looking at your drawing, this one,
Cross
Yes.
section.
I just wanna make sure I'm understanding. So when we look at the existing parking lot, it dips, looks like just under 4 feet down, and then dips back up maybe a foot to the walkway, roughly?
Dips 4 feet down? No, it goes from approximately 799.5 to 797.5.
This parking lot is 2 feet lower than the top of that.
2 feet, okay. Yeah,
So
thank you.
that's where the 18 comes in.
And then it
Right,
comes
yep.
back up, and then it comes back up to the sidewalk and then goes back down to the roadway.
Back down to the road.
And then up to the center line of the road.
Yeah, if you're measuring from the grade of the sign, it's 20 feet.
But the sign can be measured off the road, correct?
What was that again?
The sign can be measured off the road,
As far as the setback?
height, as far as
The height.
height. Or is it
I
measured
believe
at
it's
the
the
grade that
grade,
it
I
is?
believe it's the grade.
That was one of the questions I had, but that was for us board.
Sign height. Height of the sign shall be computed as the distance from the base of the sign or sign structure at normal grade to the top of the highest attached component of the sign. Normal grade shall be construed to be the lower of one existing grade prior to construction, or two, the newly established grade after construction, exclusive of any filling, berming, mounding, or excavating solely for the purpose located in the sign in cases in which the normal grade cannot reasonably be determined. Sign height shall be computed on the assumption that the elevation of the normal grade at the base of the sign or sign structure is equal to the elevation of the nearest point of the crown of a public street or grade of the land at a principal entrance to the principal structure on the lot, whichever is lower. Typically, so basically the grade to the top.
The grade for the sign, wouldn't that make it 20 feet then?
This sign is proposed to be 20 feet.
Right.
But the variance request is only for a 2 foot 18.
Yep, and you're allowed an 18-foot for an freestanding integrated sign.
Oh,
Maximum height
okay.
permitted 18.
Oh, I was looking at 16, okay.
Yep.
So it's 2 feet from 18 to 20.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Do you know how far above the grade of the building this is, the floor of the building?
I can estimate that's about 2 foot fall across from the building going out, because that was about a 2% slope coming out away from the building. It's about 100 feet out, thereabouts. So roughly about 2 feet from where the parking lot grade is that I show to the finished floor of the building would be approximately 2 feet.
For 2 foot to the grade of the building, the floor. So we're,
And then the building is 30 feet.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Board member, anybody, any questions or concerns?
So there are technically two variances, right? One for the height, the other for the fact that we gave
The sign.
we gave a variance already for a second standing sign. Because
There-
you're allowed one, right?
Yep, you're allowed one, as I put in the memo, that I supplied you guys, it's in your packet. April 2018, applicant for same property was granted a sign variance package. If you recall, those have been on the board long enough. The applicant had came to us with, various applications, and we decided to hold off until we had an entire package that included, wall signage and both freestanding signs. So this package including allowing two additional freestanding signs from the one freestanding sign that was allowed. So they were, the three total freestanding signs that you have on the property now would be one sign at the entrance to the property off of Remus Road, one sign to the entrance to the property off of Lincoln Road, and then you have a third freestanding sign that's more off the road in front of the building. The intent of that sign was to list tenants inside the building. The two signs at the entrance and exits of the property were meant to identify the complex in its whole. So that was granted along with variances for wall signage.
I'm not prepared to talk about the specifics of the sign and the size and the heights and all that, but for me, it would, if any of this were to be able to move forward, I think a condition would have to be listed for the future condominium agreement being in place. That's a sticking point for me, because if the condominium agreement was in place, they wouldn't be here for a variance. So it's a timing thing for me, and since it's something that they're offering and willing and plan to do anyways, it would seem to be a logical condition of any approval if it were something that could be approved. But
I think that's where I have an issue too, is that we have three freestanding signs, which was an exception, and we based that, if I remember correctly, basically on the size of the property, right? That because of the entranceways, it allowed it to identify the complex. And then we granted that third sign to identify tenants. Seems like we've already got a sign to do that, right? To identify tenants, that was the description of that. By granting an additional fourth sign, I mean, as I go through 5.8, section C, I would agree that condominium division needs to be part of this. Otherwise, we're really granting something that is not a hardship created by the property itself, which is one of our measuring sticks, right? So I agree that I would like to see the condominium either a condition of that or completed, one of the two.
No, the applicant had talked, or I was just gonna say and to help maybe get you guys going, so the township had offered, or not offered, granted a variance for the third sign that, as you said, would be for the tenants. Reading the write-up and in the memo, this is a sign specific to this, this company, this potential tenant. And so when you look at it that way, there's gonna be other tenants, I guess, to help communicate to the applicant. When we talk about a condition, would we want to see, as the applicant said, if they were to condominialize, they would have to change it every time they come to the board. But would you want to see a write-up of the language of what it would look like when they do go to condominiumize that, you know, this unit is one unit, this unit would potentially be another unit, and you're able to see the actual frontage that that unit has, so that would determine how much signage you would have. Is that what you're kind of getting? You want to see what it's going to look like before, or do you want to, or are you saying that you want to not do anything until it's actually the
Question for you.
condominiumization?
Okay. In the planning site review, part of it is to have monument signs with more than one tenant on them, okay? This kind of defeats the purpose. You got one tenant with one large Peterbilt sign, okay? I don't see why it couldn't be put with the rest of them. If you're a trucker, you're gonna have directions how to find the Peterbilt place, because you're gonna call in and get your service that way. It's not like you're gonna get road traffic that has come off the road because it says Peterbilt. Not likely.
Tim?
So, yeah.
I want to kind of piggyback on what Peter was saying, which I think was a comment based on what I brought up initially, which was the condominium agreement. My intent isn't, I don't think this, my intent, and I don't believe it's the duty of the board to review private condominium agreements. I would think that would be something that, as that agreement is in place, meaning I would like to stipulate that that's a condition of this approval, that they have to get the condominium agreement done. And
Then no variance is needed, so.
correct. But I'm saying I'm not opposed to a sign knowing that the condominium agreement's coming. But if we approved a sign without a condominium agreement, then why would the agreement ever be put in place? So in order to offer an approval, I would have to say that the approval is granted with a condition or a stipulation that the condominium agreement is in place at the time of completion of the development or something. I'd like to talk through that verbiage with everybody, but it's not so that we could review the details of every parcel in that agreement. That to
Right.
me is something that's gonna come before you, and that's a staff review. They submit a sign application. It's either gonna meet and they're gonna get it approved internally, or it's not, and they would have to ask for a variance. But my intent is not to try and scrutinize every individual application. That wasn't the intent of my
Well,
comments.
I would agree, except in this case, you would need it because of the height of the sign, right? So I mean, even if it was condominium, you would still have a variance on this.
Right, so
For the
one
height.
portion
Right.
of this.
And so if there was another, if it was actually split up, and there was another sign conforming to zoning put in, as long as it's conforming, it wouldn't have to come to us anyways. It'd go through Peter's office, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that we wouldn't have to see each of those,
Correct.
unless there
That's
was
exactly what I was saying.
a height or a setback or something that,
They would either meet or not, and that
Right.
would be handled by staff.
But otherwise, until that condominium is in place, and we can see every sign that they, potential occupant, correct? If they so choose, an individual sign.
If it wasn't in compliance.
I tend to agree with Commissioner Zerbe's, Commissioner, is that the right word? Board Member Zerbe's comments. You know, we have other large structures within the township that have multiple tenants, and they each have these single signs that are advertised for each of the tenants within the strip mall or whatever it is. We don't allow every tenant to put out a freestanding sign. Now, I suppose if you're dividing via condominiums and that meets our zoning, that's a way to do that, but we don't see that in our other large structures.
If you condominiumize it, then you can do that, but otherwise, you're asking for a special variance for something that, to me, kind of defeats the purpose of the sign ordinance. So you don't have just multiple signs all over the place.
I would agree. So, I mean, I think we would be granting special privileges that we're not allowing others to do, which is what it comes down to. When we're offering a variance, we have to be able to say special circumstances,
Special
right?
circumstances, yeah. I mean,
That are not a result of the property owner.
Hardship.
Right, that's a hardship that's,
Now, there's not a great amount of height difference coming along that road.
so you're speaking to the height, not,
Well, I'm just
Regarding-
saying, that they ask for the height variance period is for one thing, you know, I just don't see it, okay? And the other thing is, I don't see the reason for the sign if you already have availability on your monument signs, say Peterbilt on it, okay?
Right, on the third sign that they have. or
Yeah.
One of the 3 signs.
I agree. Should we be going through this?
Yeah, I mean, we have to review section 5, going through A through E. If anybody's got any other questions or comments, anybody concerning a motion? Proposal?
Well, I was gonna say, before you guys go into, because as there's the 2 requests, when you're going through your criteria in section 5.8, one is a height request, the other is in the quantity of freestanding signs. I guess the first question that you'd want to ask yourselves is the variance of an additional sign in itself, because if the answer to that one is no, then invariably you're
The other one's
no.
mute.
The other one is a no as well. So the first question you'd want to ask is the additional sign, and then move on to the actual height of this potential additional sign.
I agree with John's argument, if that's what you were making. To me, it doesn't make sense. We already have 3 freestanding. And until there's some division, and I agree, Andy, that it'd be nice to have that in place, but we can't, then you don't need it, at least as quantity,
Right.
as far as quantity goes,
Right.
not
like
regarding the height.
individually, yeah, individually as far as signs go.
Did you make it conditional on?
When
I'm
they're
saying it doesn't make it,
Yeah.
doesn't make any,
conditional with that, but
doesn't
then
make any sense to
if
do
they
that.
do that, then there's
Right.
no need anyhow.
That
Okay.
was,
Right.
that was my initial thought was,
Right.
if it were to be approved, make that a condition, which I guess does seem redundant, because
You don't need it,
then you
Yeah.
don't need it, so.
right?
Yeah.
But I am sympathetic to the idea of not spending a lot of
Right.
effort to rewrite a condominium agreement every time you get a new tenant, so.
Right.
That part of it, I think, has merit. For me, I think it would be easy enough to say on the height, I mean, that's arbitrary. I mean, obviously, they picked something that they like, right? I mean, that's what, they approved a rendering, that's how they arrived at that height. I don't think there's anything other than the aesthetic factor. The grade is mentioned repeatedly in here, because there's
Well, they established it.
multiple variations in that grade. So, I mean, they've laid out a very systematic argument following our 5.8 criteria. So, before a motion was made, I think that would be helpful to look at what their interpretation of it is, and we can kind of refute those if everybody has already formulated an opinion. I mean, I don't know where you're at with this. Brian and Paul John are pretty clear on it.
I mean, I
Yeah.
read them, but I tend to try to interpret them myself.
Right.
But I do read the applicant's
Right.
arguments. it's helpful to go through, I'm fine with that.
Well, so typically, we do it, I guess, one of two ways. Either there's a motion made and then we go through the criteria, or we can go through the criteria and, maybe we'll find a motion after going through the criteria. The first, criteria, section 5.8C, a variance from the terms of this ordinance shall not be granted by the Board of Appeals unless and until A, that special conditions and circumstances exist that are peculiar to the land, structure, or building involved that are not applicable to other lands, structures, or buildings in the same zoning district. This district is a B5 highway business district.
And can I stop you there for a minute? I think what you mentioned, Peter, is the proper way to go, which is the number of signs first,
Yes.
right?
Quantity.
Right. we
Quantity,
gotta get
okay.
quantity
So let's address that one and then we'll come back.
For the height and.
Okay.
To me, the
Okay.
grade is a sticking point with that, you know, that there are special conditions or circumstances.
For the quantity?
For just, no.
Okay.
No, just for the
All right.
height, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
for quantities, okay, go ahead. We're looking at quantity of signs on the property right now.
Yep.
Certainly.
So what we're looking at is determining, are there special conditions, circumstances exist that are peculiar to the land, structure, or building involved, so take all three into account, that are not applicable to other lands, structures, or buildings, all three, in the same zoning district. And keep in mind, this is a B5 highway business district. I think one thing that
Go ahead.
I was just say, I don't see special conditions because we do have large structures like strip malls, et cetera, that have units. I mean, this isn't different than that in that regard.
Well, I think the special conditions were already accounted for in the original development when the extra sign was granted. The third,
For the entranceways, right?
Correct.
Yeah, we had granted additional entranceway and then,
It was a corner lot too, but.
I would agree.
So,
Okay, so.
next one would be a variance from the terms of this ordinance shall not be granted by the Board of Appeals unless and until the literal interpretation of the provisions of this ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district under the terms of this ordinance.
no.
No.
Well, I mean, the business is still allowed, it's not like we're stopping business. And they do have a space for a sign. It's just not where they're looking at.
I can't think of any other properties. Because if it did, it'd be non-conforming.
Yeah.
I mean,
So item C, a variance from the terms of this ordinance shall not be granted by the Board of Appeals unless and until that the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant.
I think we stated that there weren't special conditions here, right?
From a quantity perspective, I would agree.
Yeah,
the
that's,
quantity.
yes, just in the quantity.
Right.
Item D, a variance from the terms of this ordinance shall not be granted by the Board of Appeals unless and until that granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by this ordinance to other lands, structures, or buildings in the same zoning district. Again, all three take into account, and the district is a B5 highway business district.
Which would be a special circumstance.
I would agree.
Agreed.
Yeah, at this point.
E, a variance from the terms of this ordinance shall not be granted by the Board of Appeals unless and until no non-conforming use of neighboring land, structures, or buildings in the same zoning district and no permitted use of land, structures, or buildings in the other zoning districts shall be considered grounds for the issuance of a variance.
we didn't use any other sites
Yeah.
in our discussion. I mean, we did as far as like malls and stuff, but they're not granted these things.
Correct.
Right, we didn't grant it outright.
So we went through all 5, that would be for the quantity of for an additional sign.
Other than
I guess motion to deny based on that doesn't meet any criteria that would allow the variance.
Section 5.8C1.
Yeah, I'd support that.
John support.
You did make a motion, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Any other comments? Those in favor of the motion?
Oh, and so just so that
Okay.
we have a motion and a second, the reasons would be stated that there were no special conditions, circumstances that existed peculiar to the land, so that'd be A. Was there a consensus on B, the literal interpretation?
I think
The provisions of the ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly, so it wouldn't be B. Special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. I guess I didn't hear anybody say anything on that, or,
didn't see any.
okay. That granting the variance requested would confer on the applicant any special privilege, that is denied by the ordinance. I guess I'm just looking for which ones do we want to cite in the reason? Is it A and B, or, all 5?
I think it
I'd
was
say
all 5.
Okay.
All 5 is commented on.
Which is what you stated in your motion, right?
Five,
Yeah.
Yeah.
5.8.
5.8, section C, 1,
one.
A and B.
Now with all those numbers and letters.
Yeah. And John, you support
Yes.
that motion? Okay. Unless there's any other comment. Those in favor of the motion presented?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Hearing none? Variance.
The decision of the board shall not be final until 21 days after it is made, and any person having an interest affected by such ordinance shall have the right to appeal to circuit court on questions of law and fact during said period. Please note that the 21 days start after the decision is final. The decision is not final until minutes are approved. Minutes will be approved at the next regular meeting in February. Further, decisions of board not final. Any person or persons or any taxpayer, department, board, or bureau of the township aggrieved by any decision of the Board of Appeals shall have the right to appeal to the Isabella County Circuit Court on questions of law and fact.
Question. I believe the motion primarily was just for the quantity that we were talking about. Is that correct?
Yes, it was for quantity.
Do we need to address, because there were 2 variances requested?
Well, and the height one would be, and I'd have to,
No, it's come mute point on this particular sign, but,
it could, yeah, but at the same time, it is requested, so.
and if they if they do a condominium later,
Well,
There's
and
potential
I guess it would be because we have the 2-foot variance on this sign, so it'd be in your court to decide, do you want to grant a 2-foot variance on a potential 1 sign, or a 2-foot variance for potential, all the signs that would qualify? Because right now, the 2-foot variance was just asked for this one particular sign.
I think that the second request for height is moot at this point. If and when there's a request for a sign, it is condominium height, then we deal with it at that point.
it just
Yeah,
seems
I
to me
would
that since there were 2 variances, we should specifically make sure that's addressed
It
too.
was stated in the minutes that the height variance request is,
Should it just be tabled then? And can't,
Well,
then we'd have to come back to it, I
Yeah.
would say.
Well,
Yeah,
and so
we'd have to
yeah.
come back to it.
the quantity item was denied, and so just closed the loop on it. We could offer a second motion on the 2-foot variance and either, grant or deny.
If they were to come back, if they put a condominium in and came back with the same request with the height variance, there's a time delay, right, before they can do that again?
To
Is it-
request?
To request a height
Yeah.
variance?
or-
Or
There-
would be
there's-
in that case a new case, right? So
The
it'd be,
applicant could
they wouldn't have to
withdraw-
wait.
The applicant could withdraw that request for the height variance, right? At this time,
Sure.
and there'd be nothing that would have to be said.
Well, and so it'd be my advice to you guys to maybe ask the applicant what they would wanna do it, if they still wanna request a 2-foot variance, or, you know, we don't wanna assume too much.
Okay, well, at this time, I'll ask applicant, given us,
My opinion would be that there was a denial of the sign, so therefore it is mute. The request came in together, so it was one request, 2 items within the request. If you deny the sign, it's mute. So we would have to, if we condominiumize it and we wanted the exact same sign, I would have to turn in a separate one because the applicant would be different too.
Right, that's what I was thinking too, was separate.
So
it's a separate
I-
issue.
I don't think you rule on it, I think it negates, if you need us to formally withdraw it, we will withdraw it. However, you want to handle that.
Well, I feel if we can, because the sign was denied at this point, then the height variance is mute at this point. And such time, if the sign ever comes back, you can decide then what you want for a sign. We're not gonna make a limit on it now, I feel like with nothing there per se. So with that being said, thank you guys. Move on to other business. Do we have any other business? I'll just state, as Peter stated earlier, when we get a full board members, then we will do election of officers, which we would feel is in March.
Yep. and the
After a
ru-
couple appointees are
Yeah, rules of,
clarified.
rules of procedure that you guys have adopted, which of course, you know, you wanted to amend, you can, but as it states now, we would elect our officers in March. And so, Andy will be, vice chair, for tonight and next month, and
Vice secretary.
vice
but-
secretary, excuse me. And then, in March, all the offices are up, so anybody who wants to, continue or,
And
be
or
an officer.
in February to see who's here.
yeah.
Brian.
Forgive me for asking, Peter, did you read the notice that you have to read afterwards?
Yes.
You did,
About the
okay.
21-day, yep.
Yeah, he did after. Before.
Was just not remembering it.
Okay, there's no other business. This time I'll open up extended public comment. If anybody has any comments, please step to the podium, say your name and address. Hearing none, close the public comment. Any other final board comments? Hearing none, close comments. Adjourn the meeting, 7:49.